Okay, so at this point, I assume that you have read about the purpose of this assignment, that you have read about the prior knowledge that you will need to activate, that you have read about the grading for this assignment. And so this is why you have clicked on this link or this link I should say, to access this video. With that said, let's go ahead and get started covering all of these important topics, remembering that you will be getting additional requirements, tips, and warnings. Also, one last demonstration, kind of a refresh and review with respect to what it is that you will be doing. So you're going to start off so you have the submission link down here, right? Submit your markup and reformatting results. So the results you need to get, as you know from reading this, is your answer to the first prompt only. So the first paragraph that you submitted of 4 in the week 2 mandatory writing assignment. So you're going to go to the course menu bar and you're going to click on grades and feedback. Then you're going to look for your week 2 writing submission. Here it is. It says submit your response here, week 2, task 1B, 10% of course grade, foundational writing assignment. Now, very important. If you did not submit a revision, then you have to use what you gave me. If you did submit a revision, but you're still waiting for me to grade it, you can go ahead and still use the revised version. If you would like to know what your score is for the revised version before you make a decision about analyzing your original response for the first paragraph or the revised one, email me or text me and I will get it done within 24 hours. If it's during my working hours or during the day, even if I'm kind of signed off a bit, I will go ahead and get it done within minutes if possible. All right, so in any case, whether it's an official revision submission or you only submitted once, you're going to click on this right here. So as you can see, I have an example. This was example 3 from a previous lesson and decided to wait and use it as a refresh item, a review item here for this task. So I just want to emphasize again, so let's say that you did not do a revision based on my feedback. So everybody got video-based feedback on the quality of their response. If you did not do a revision, you have to use this original response. You cannot change anything except minor typos. And a lot of students, what bothers them is that after going through the lessons, like weeks 3, 4, and 5, or 6, they begin to see flaws with their arguments, but that's the whole point. Now, and marking it up and reformatting it helps to highlight them, and you have to be okay with that. Again, if you did the revised version and you want to pull up your revised version that you submitted, you can do that. But the only people who can do that are people who submitted a revision on time for grading. Okay, so as you know, you have 4 responses, right? So you have item 1, 2, 3, 4. You are only copying and pasting the first response to item 1. Now, this is not the topic for you. So the topic for you guys was whether or not Derek Chauvin was overly aggressive in his use of a knee to subdue George Floyd. So that's what the paragraph is about. That was the topic of your argument. I have a different topic here, but the general point in terms of operational procedures still stands. You are looking for the first response in the week 2 assignment. So you're going to copy it. So my mouse let me copy it there. And then you need to go back to the week 6 bundle folder. You don't see all those folders necessarily because I'm sort of in a teacher mode. So then you go back to this folder in week 6. And then you go to submit your markup and reformatting results. Now, as you have been doing, and as you will continue to, as you did for the writing assignment, you are going to do write submission. You're going to click here. Do not attach a file. I don't want to have to open up a bunch of files because I teach 4 classes. I don't want to open up 100 different files. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on write submission. Do not use this to put your answer in. That will mess up my grading screen. I won't be able to grade and see your results at the same time. And that could result in not nice consequences. Okay, so you have to click on write submission. Then you get the text box here, just like you did for the writing assignment during week 2. Now, let's say I'm going to try to paste my response. So sometimes Blackboard won't let you use your mouse to paste a response. So you'll have to read this to see what commands on your keyboard you can use to paste a response. So I have to use Command V, and now I've got my response in there. So one thing you might notice is that when you do this, you see only one row of tools. You expand that, and you will need to expand that to complete this assignment as instructed by clicking right here. So you can minimize and expand. And I did not mean to do that, so how do I get back out of that? Okay, there you go. Or you may need to do it. Depends on how big your screen is that you're looking at. All right, so one thing that I'm going to give you extra credit for, maybe 2 or 3 points, is if you do if you do subtitles the way that I show you. So as you know, I really care about you showing formatting, trying to make your response and the different parts of your responses very clear through formatting. So here I'm going to put ordinary argument from prompt 1 of the week 2 writing assignment. I'm going to bold that. You can use this exact same heading. In fact, I encourage you to. Now, your entire response should not be in bold, so let me fix that. Again, notice, see what's going on. Oh, I seem to be getting a call. Let me pause. Okay, so I'm going to change the font size here just because I can get more in the screen here. I tend to like Tahoma, Roman, and Arial, but you decide on that. Again, you can use this exactly. Underneath that, well, first of all, let's just go ahead and start applying as a demonstration and as a refresh what you're supposed to do. But take note that an important part of this section of this video is to show you how I want you to mark up an argument online. So there is a little bit of difference, but not too much. So I will show you how to do the online markup of an argument as we actually work through yet another example. All right, so let's go ahead and start with our reading. So George Floyd, and if you want to practice on your own, you could go to the week 5, one of the week 5 lessons, one of the handouts or the downloads. It has this argument. So if you want to try doing this all on your own, like everything, that is strongly encouraged. Why would you want to do that? That would, and don't even study your notes, don't look at your notes. See how well you do not looking at your notes, not studying, not preparing, not refreshing, and just trying to see if you can remember to do everything the way you're supposed to do it. And then resume the video or this video to see if you did it correctly, and that'll give you a good sense of like, oh yeah, I better make sure that I do everything she says the way she's told me to do it to do well. All right, so that said, I'm gonna assume that you take advantage of this opportunity, that you've paused the video, and now you're ready to go over the answer, as well as learning how to mark this up online. So I've got George Floyd should not have been eulogized. Okay, so that is a statement. So we're still going to bracket the statements. One thing that students do that I do not care for, that because it's cluttery, is they'll use a brace. So right there is what is called a brace. Those are more ornate. They're not as crisp or as clean. So we want to use we want to use brackets still. Now, it's going to be too hard and weird and messy to do statement labels and numbers above the statement. So when it comes to marking up online, we're going to move the statement number and label to the left of the statement that is being numbered and labeled. Do not put it at the end of the statement that in your mind you're labeling and numbering, or I'm going to interpret that the number and label is for the next statement or sentence. Or even if the next sentence is a question, that you've labeled and numbered a question, which you should not do. So since I want to label and number this statement, we go to the left of the opening bracket. It's going to be statement 1. I'm not going to label it yet because I don't know if it's a premise or a conclusion. My reasons for thinking this are as follows. That's definitely a statement. So 2, bracketing. Let us start with the word eulogize itself. So that's more like a command, like an implied command, like this is what we're going to do now. Let us start with, so we're not going to bracket that. That's more in line with a command. What does it mean? It's a question. According to Dr. C, so this is an appeal to an authority. It's a statement about what somebody said something means. So we're going to put 3, bracket, and bracket. In my opinion, we should, so in my opinion, I'm not going to bracket that part. As you know, I don't like to put brackets around conclusion, premise, or assurance, or discount, or hedging indicators when they're at the very beginning of the statement. So we should eulogize only those who are honorable and worthy of high praise, closing bracket. In my opinion, okay, so that's a hedge, I'm gonna leave it out. This is statement what? Uh-oh, look at what I forgot to do. That's statement 3, what did I forget to do here? Note that that is statement 4. Now I've got statement 5. Anyone who has failed to respect the dignity of another human being has lost the privilege of being honored and praised. Okay. Floyd held a pregnant woman at gunpoint. That's another statement. So number and bracket. And this is an act that treated her as a means to an end. That's another statement. So that's statement what? 7. We've got yet another statement. When you do this, now here's an example of a minor thing that you can fix in your original response. I left out a verb here. If you have a tiny little thing like that you find, like you miss one word is missing, or you misspelled a word, or you used the wrong version of the word, you can fix that. Or if the word is clunky and you need to move 2 or 3 words around, the wording, you can fix that. Okay, and when you do this, okay, so we're going to have opening bracket for statement what? 8. When you do this, you are violating someone's dignity. Okay, so notice that that one sentence right there has 1, 2, 3, 4 statements. This is why you've got to be like very careful. You have to have intellectual carefulness and intellectual perseverance, reading through things, making sure that you're applying the definition of statement at this point, the way that we've defined it, carefully. Thus, he violated, so statement 9, the dignity of the pregnant woman, and consequently, statement 10, he lost that privilege. Thus, my original conclusion, statement 11, he should not have been eulogized. All right, so I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there's a lot of indicators in there, a lot of conclusion indicators, so that probably tells us that this is what kind of an argument? Probably a complex argument, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and label. I want to make sure you guys know where to put the labels when you're doing online. So George Floyd should not have been eulogized. And notice down here, what does it say? Thus, my original conclusion, he should not have been eulogized. So what they did here is beautiful in the paragraph. This is rhetorically wonderful. They start off with the conclusion, they support it, then they remind you of what it was they were arguing for the whole time. That is statement 1. So now we know that statement 11 is basically the conclusion repeated. Even if a conclusion or a premise is repeated, we still label it. So we're going to say C, and here it's repeated. Okay? We can use this to know that this is the conclusion, but we know that this is the conclusion before we get to statement 11. Why? Because they make this statement 1, and then they say, my reason for thinking this are as follows. So when they say my reasons for thinking this, they're saying here comes premises for this, what I said before. So we already knew by statement 2 that statement 1 was a conclusion. All right, so we're going to go ahead and so you put the number, and then you still put the label after the number, but beside the opening bracket before it. So here we're going to put conclusion, and I'm going to put question mark, because I don't know if it's the final conclusion or sub-conclusion or what, because I know I have other conclusion indicators in here. All right, so now I've got, this does not get labeled as anything. This entire statement is a premise indicator. It is not in and of itself functioning as a premise or conclusion. This doesn't get anything. It's not a statement, nothing, nothing. Statement 3. That is functioning as the first reason, so we're going to put P. All right, so according to Dr. C, eulogize refers to the communicative act of honoring and praising someone who has passed on. So in this argument, they're appealing to an authority about the meaning of a word, and that's something that definitely that philosophers, especially Socrates, was very concerned about. What we are very concerned about in this class is how are we using words? How do they inform our use of concepts to organize experience and make sense of it? So then we've got, in my opinion, we should utilize openly. Okay, then we've got, in my opinion, giving more, reasoning or ideas. And then we've got more, and then we've got more, and then they seem to think a conclusion is following from all this. Do you see that? So, I wasn't really sure. I'm reading this, but I don't have any premise or conclusion indicators. But it seems like, because they're saying what? My reasons for this thinking this are as follows. So I know they're going to give me more than one reason. So far, I've identified only one reason, that statement 3 is a premise. I'm thinking that maybe all of these are premises. And then I see that statement 9 has what conclusion indicator? Thus. So statement 9 is a conclusion, and I'm willing to bet that they're all supposed that statement 9 is supposed to follow from the other ones. So even if I'm not sure, I'm going to go ahead and put a P here for all these other statements. And you can make final decisions when you're reformatting. And that's a tip that I may have given you before, is that sometimes you don't make final decisions till you're reformatting, because sometimes when you reformat, that reformatting process helps your visual critical thinking. It allows you to spatialize the content that you need to analyze, interpret, and make sense of. All right, if you're not sure, you could always do question marks. The only thing is, if you put question marks in there, make sure that you get rid of the question marks before you submit this answer. Okay, so I have conclusion there. This is a conclusion. We said this one's repeated. I'm wondering, just because, so here's the tip that I've given you before and that I'm going to remind you of. If you did this correctly, right, then you're definitely going to have a conclusion first. If you do not have any sub-conclusions after the first statement, then you have a simple argument, and I should see a C here. Not an SC, not an FC. I already lectured on that. If, however, you realize that you do have a sub-conclusion in here, and again, look at the sub-conclusion definition in the previous lecture notes, then this should be an FC, and the other conclusions in here will be SC, if you did this correctly. I should never see at the beginning of, well, no, I can't say that, so I'm going to stop what I was saying. All right, so I'm thinking here it's a sub-conclusion about George Floyd violating the dignity of a pregnant woman. Maybe I'm somehow using that to argue that he should not have been eulogized, since that has to be with high praise or high honor. So I'm thinking that that could be the final conclusion, and that this perhaps is a sub-conclusion. It's a step, it's a conclusion that I first wanted to get you to believe before making my final claim about eulogizing George Floyd. All right, and this is just the conclusion repeated. All right, so it doesn't hurt to go through all of the sentences again, all of the bracketed statements, really, to make sure that you haven't missed anything. Okay, so now you see how you did this markup, right? And of course, you've reviewed your notes, so you've got your examples. We've got our numbering. I put that, yes, it's a number. It's still the number, then the label, except instead of putting that stuff above the sentences or the statements, you're putting it beside the opening bracket. So now that we've labeled stuff, it's safe to get rid of excess verbiage and other words that I've told you to eliminate by drawing a line through them. So again, how do we draw a line? You're going to see me using the editing function. So this is just a big premise indicator. So we're going to draw a line. Here's the icon that you use right here. If you're not able to get this to all work, you need to figure out a browser or device that will let you do this, because this is the markup that you need to do. So what you'll do is you can try Firefox. I have found to be the browser that works the best with Blackboard and the assignments in this class. Then I would try Google Chrome. I do not suggest doing work on tablets, however. Okay, so then we get rid of all of this that we didn't bracket and number as a statement, of course. I'm going to leave according to Dr. C. It's not just an introduction. It's saying, here's an authority. It's an argument that is called appeal to authority. In my opinion, getting rid of that because that is a what? A hedge. I'm going to get rid of the repeated use of that hedge. Remember that excess verbiage can also be within the sentence. So I could have said, anyone who has failed, comma, in my opinion, or I could have put in my opinion at the end. So make sure you're looking within the bracketed items as well. Okay, so then I'm going to get rid of this word and here. I'm going to get rid of this. Getting rid of this conclusion indicator. Again, you can see the icon that you should be using. Again, you click here if you don't see everything. Oh my gosh, you guys, look at what I missed. Oh, this is so great. So it's really interesting to see how, as you proceed through the argument, you might see things that you missed. I missed statement 10. What kind of an indicator is consequently, typically, not all the time, but typically, conclusion indicator? So statement 10, given what I've analyzed so far, could be a subconclusion. Put a question mark, because I'm not absolutely sure yet. But I'm still going to draw a line through that or create a line through that. If a statement is repeated, then you're going to cross it out. However, cross out the statement that is less precise and less exact. So this one says, he should not have been eulogized. This one says, who is he? George Floyd should not have been eulogized. Since this one is more precise, gives more details, we're not wondering about who should be eulogized. It says George Floyd. This one's more fuzzy. Therefore, we're going to cross out not only the conclusion indicator, but we're going to cross out the repetition. Because that's mere repetition, okay? All right, so now that I've done that, I've gotten rid of some of the clutter, and I'm going to go ahead and reformat. Before you do that, well, we still need to make final decisions, so I don't want to do anything else yet. So now here's a tip. When you're ready to reformat, you can copy the whole thing and then paste it. Then what I recommend you do to make sure you do this systematically and thoroughly is isolate each statement. If you have excess verbiage, you can go ahead and get rid of it. I first get rid of the excess verbiage that is a whole sentence, and then I go back and look for the smaller instances of excess verbiage. So I'm gonna pause this video so I can finish doing this, and then you can check your answer. So I'm gonna finish isolating this. And if you want, you might actually start doing this online to practice. Even if you have to do it in Word, you still get a feel for it. Okay, so as you can see, I have isolated each of the statements that are functioning, each of the statements that I had copied and pasted. Now, I should not see this, and this is a mistake that some people make, so write this in your tips and warnings. Whatever is crossed out in your ordinary argument here, you need to not have it appear here. So look at statement 2. We eliminated that, so it should not be here. So it should be like this. I do not recommend renumbering the statements that are premises yet, and you'll find out why in a minute. Okay, so I wait to do that almost till the end. All right, so we've got that one. Is there any more excess verbiage? So see if you can find any other excess verbiage that you've crossed out in here that you can delete. Now notice, you can delete and should delete excess verbiage and other things that you've drawn a line through, but only when you've reformatted. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to go through to the rest of this. You should pause the video, try it on your own, see if you got the correct answer. Okay, so as you can see, I've done some deletions. Do your deletions match up with mine? Another thing we need to do is we need to get rid of the brackets. You must get rid of the brackets when reformatting. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Another thing we need to do, as you'll recall from one of the argument modules and the examples, is make sure all of the statements begin with capital letters and make sure they all have proper punctuation at the end, periods. So you do that and then check your answer with mine. Okay, so as you can see, I've now removed all but one bracket, so I'm going to remove that. I decided to do the punctuation live or through video, recorded. So I've got George Floyd should not have been eulogized. Good, that's fine. Got to capitalize that right there. So did you catch that? So capitalize that, has a period. Got to capitalize the A in anyone, period. Floyd, oh, look, there's a comma. We end a sentence, now that we've isolated the statement into its own sentence, with a period. Then we've got to capitalize this. So these probably were in that one sentence that had 4 statements, or these were, something like that. Got to take out that comma, put a period. When you do this, you're violating someone's dignity, period. He violated the dignity of a pregnant woman, period. He lost that privilege, period. Okay. Oh my gosh, guys, look at, we're making so much progress in our response. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to put the statements in the proper order. So as you know, if you are working with a complex argument, as you know, there's always, what's going to come last in a reformat is a conclusion. If it's a complex argument, the final conclusion will always come last. And of course, I'm just repeating information you've already gotten. So statement one is now the last statement. Statement one in the ordinary argument is now the last statement in the reformatted argument. Okay, so as you know, I'm going to leave the number there for right now, and you'll understand why when we get to that point. So I'm going to make this just a tiny bit smaller because we need some more space. All right, so I've got, according to Dr. C, eulogize refers to the communicative act of honoring and praising someone. So as you know, this is where we order the statements properly, but we also apply uniform language. So that's what I'm doing. We should eulogize only those who are honorable and worthy of praise. Anyone who has failed to disrespect the dignity of another human being has lost the privilege of being honored and praised. Floyd held a pregnant woman at gunpoint. This is an act that treated her as a means to an end. Okay, so when you do this, okay, so when you do what? So we need uniform language right here. When you do this refers back to what was stated in here in the ordinary argument up here, right? So it says, Floyd held a pregnant woman. This is an act of treating her as a mere means to an end. When you do this, so when you do this is referring back to treating someone as a mere means. So when you, oh, wait a minute. Is that what it is? Let's see. Yeah, treating her, the pregnant woman. So her, in fact, here, I've got to do uniform language. This is an act that treated her. Who is it talking about? The pregnant woman. Treated a pregnant woman as a mere means to an end. When you do this, then I go in here to figure out what it is. So her, pregnant woman. Up here, when you do this, treating somebody as a mere means to an end. Okay, so when you do this, when you treat someone as a mere means to an end, that goes with by the way, you guys will learn more about this when we get to the ethics session. But that's like, have you ever interacted with somebody or had a relationship with somebody or hung out with somebody or you had something going on with somebody and then you're like, man, you just used me, or or you just use people. So for some people, there seems to be a moral connotation with that. And that's what this is getting at from the standpoint of philosophy. But we'll learn more about what it means to, why some people think that, you should never treat people merely as a means, but always as an end. It's because, and the idea is that it's wrong to use people, that you don't just use people like you use, animals, non-human animals or whatnot. And of course, some people say you shouldn't do that either. Okay, so when you treat someone as a mere means to an end, you are violating someone's dignity. So I've already applied uniform language twice. He violated the dignity of a pregnant woman. So then he is who, guys? George Floyd violated the dignity of, we're going to say that pregnant woman, because maybe he's violated the dignity of other pregnant women, but we want to make sure it's this one. In fact, we could use uniform language. The pregnant woman that he did what? What did he do with her? Oh yeah, the pregnant woman he held at gunpoint. He lost that privilege. Who lost the privilege? George Floyd. Which privilege did he lose? Okay. Is there any language in here? We can't figure it out going up this way. We might go down here this way. Sometimes you have to go back up here to see. So George Floyd should not have been eulogized. Eulogize refers to honoring or passing on someone. We should eulogize only those who are honorable and worthy of praise. And then it says that he lost that right. So probably being honored and praised maybe, right? So he lost that privilege. Eulogize refers to the communicative act of honoring and praising someone. We should eulogize only those who are honorable and worthy of praise. So yeah, the privilege of being honored and praised. George Floyd should not have been eulogized. Okay. So now we can make some final decisions. So now what you do is you try to decide, do you have the correct statements? Do you have the statements in the best possible order? So one thing I probably mentioned in the other lecture is that you want to put the premises that directly support a given subconclusion above that subconclusion. So really, while this is okay, it could be better to present the actual logic in the argument. One mistake that some students make is that they think they have to put all of the premises first and then all of the conclusions together in a complex argument. But then that ignores when I tell you that if a premise is directly supporting a particular subconclusion, then you should put that subconclusion directly under those premises. So one thing we might do is say, okay, which premises directly support this subconclusion? George Floyd violated the dignity of the pregnant woman he held at gunpoint. You can go back to the ordinary argument as part of your strategy for figuring that out, but you can also use this. So which statements are talking about dignity of pregnant women holding at gunpoint? So we see pregnant woman here, treating someone as a means to an end, which is mentioned here in relation to the woman. So it seems like 6, 7, 8 are all supporting 9. But look at 3, 4, and 5. Those are more about eulogizing when people should be eulogized. This is more about a pregnant woman and what it meant to do what was done to her. So this statement right here, these 3 statements are really more in support of what? They're more going towards this, or they might be, but I'm just showing you how I try to work through something. So now I'm going to read through it. Floyd held a pregnant woman at gunpoint. This is an act that treated a woman as a mere means to an end. Oh, look, uniform language. Holding a person at gunpoint is an act that treated, or we could say George Floyd's holding the woman at gunpoint treated a pregnant woman as a mere means to an end. So here we need to say George Floyd held a pregnant woman at gunpoint. George Floyd's holding the woman at gunpoint treated. Here we don't have to say, since we already added the woman, so we can say, we need to be precise which one, the pregnant woman at gunpoint treated. Now we can say her. We don't have to repeat pregnant woman in the same sentence if it's in the same sentence. Treated her. George Floyd's holding the pregnant woman at gunpoint. I really think it's important to keep the word act. Is an act that treated her as a mere means to an end. Okay. When you treat someone as a mere means to an end, you are violating someone's dignity. So that's more like a general principle. So we don't want to make it particular to the pregnant woman. George Floyd violated the dignity of the pregnant woman. Okay, so yeah, do you see how 6 through 8 are being used to support 9? Now that the person has gotten you to has tried to get you to believe this. Okay, so first they wanted, not first, but they tried to convince you at some point in the argument, they wanted to convince you that George Floyd violated the dignity of some pregnant woman he held at gunpoint. At some point in the argument, not necessarily in this order, right? In the ordinary argument, the statements don't occur in the same order that we're presenting them down here, right? But here we're trying to make the logical structure very clear, very, very transparent. So then here, now that they've convinced you or tried to convince you about George Floyd violating the dignity of someone, they want to bring in what it means to eulogize someone and whether we should eulogize George Floyd. Hence, now we've got this premise about eulogizing. We should eulogize only those who are honorable and worthy of high praise. Anyone who has failed to respect the dignity of another human being has lost the privilege of being honored and praised. Subconclusion, George Floyd lost that privilege of being honored and praised. And we already know why. So you would not add anything. Why? Because he did what? It says anyone who has failed to disrespect the dignity of the other. Well, we already established that he did this up here, right? We already have the because right here in the subconclusion. So really now this statement 9 is used in support statement 3, in support statement 4, and support statement 5 to derive statement 10. And then on the basis of all that, it is taken to be justified that George Floyd should not have been eulogized. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the pattern. So if you want extra credit, type up egg, do it just like this. Type egg. Okay, so first of all, no, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So you do need to watch this part of the video because I still have something, there's still something that we have to fix in here, but I don't want to do it till I show you how to do this for extra credit. You can get up to like 3 to 5 points of extra credit for this. So argument pattern, remember the argument pattern is based on what's up here. So what's up here? We've got a final conclusion followed by at least one premise, followed by a subconclusion. Remember, each time you see a subconclusion, you write subconclusion, unlike premise. So we have a final conclusion with at least one premise. There were actually 3 or 4. Then you had 2 subconclusions. And then you had at least one more premise. There were actually 2. And then we had what? The final conclusion. We'll say final conclusion, and then we'll do like a backslash repeated. Oh, we'll put in parentheses. So that's how you can do the argument pattern right there. All right, so there's not 2 final conclusions. As I've noted, we're just saying that it was repeated. Don't bold that, so let me unbold. Okay, so that's worth some extra credit. Then another thing you can do for extra credit, and like I said, the video is not over because we still have to fix this. This isn't finalized. There's a really important missing information here. This is not correct right here. There's something wrong. So we've got to do argument diagram. This can get you an extra 3 to 5 points. Some of you have harder arguments, so I'll be more flexible with that grading. But if you had a really simple argument, just a conclusion and some premises, the extra credit is all or nothing. But if you had a really complex argument or more difficult argument that you created, I'll be a little bit more flexible in the grading because yours was a challenge item, so to speak. So just like I tell you to, I do keep context in mind. So the diagram, we are going to do it based a little bit by looking at this and at this. So we know that we have, now here's why I tell you to not change this yet. Because it helps if you have these statement numbers in the reformatted version, it helps you to make sense of what the diagram should be comprised of. So I know I have statement 6, a premise, working together with statement 7, and I'm using the reformatted version. I left the statement numbers beside the labels so I would know what is what. This makes it so much easier to do the diagram. Statement 6 plus statement 7 plus statement 8, another premise, are all used in support of, so we've got to underline it. So let me minimize this so I don't have to keep going up and down. Yay, so you have to underline that. Now, I don't know how to do an arrow tip, so as long as you have a line, I'll be good. Not that kind of line. I'll minimize this just a little bit more. There we go. So I'm going to put the line in the center of the supporting premise line. So I'm going to put this. That I got from going to the key that has the backslash on it and hitting shift. So I've got 6, 7, and 8 in support of statement 9. Subconclusion. Uh-oh, you know what I forgot to do, guys? Oh, wait, no, I'll do that at the end. So subconclusion. Then I've got what? Now they've convinced me of that. They're going to roll this statement in. This was first a conclusion, or not first a conclusion, but it was a conclusion at some point, but it also functions as a premise. So, and actually on this one, I think it might have first functioned as a conclusion and then as a premise, and not as a it might have first functioned as a premise and then as a conclusion, and not as a conclusion then a premise. In any case, it functioned as both, but as one thing or the other at different times. So, but then this is joined together with 3, 4, and 5 to support 10. So now I'm going to do plus S3, a premise, plus S4, another premise, plus S5, another premise. So again, we have to underline those. Notice that I didn't put an arrow tip because I don't know how to do that, but you can put a dash. or a line. Now notice that this line is centered underneath the row of support here, but the line, and if it had an arrow, would only go to this subconclusion. This should not be centered under here because 6, 7, and 8 are not given in support of 3, 4, and 5. 6, 7, and 8 are given in support of 9 only. Then, after 9 function, then, I shouldn't say after, then, or I should maybe I shouldn't even say 9. But at some point in the argument, 9 is taken to follow from 6, 7, and 8, right? But it also turns out that statement 9 is also used as support with statements 3, 4, and 5 in support of another conclusion. Scoot that over. So I'm spacing the bar to get it to the center. So we put it under the center of that row. And then I need to write statement what? 10, another subconclusion. Excellent. Am I done? I need to go back and check and make sure. Nope, I haven't forgotten because I'm still working on it. I haven't finished. Statement 1 was the final conclusion. So that's all that's missing now. So can you do that? I'm going to need this, we'll do this right here, copy. Okay, so as you can see in this argument, they went directly from a subconclusion to a final conclusion, which you can have. Also, in this argument, you can see that they have 2 subconclusions. So they've got one step from here to statement 9. Then they use statement 9, or statement 9 is also used as a premise for step 2 to get to statement 10, a subconclusion. And then a third step is taken to get, or another step is there to get to the final conclusion. Now this is not the order of the premises in the conclusions in the ordinary argument, right? That's why it's called the diagram. The diagram showing the actual logical structure in terms of support. Remember, the arrow downward means in support of. This just tells you in what order they originally occurred. That is the statements, but without the numbers. This is kind of more fuzzy, kind of general, right? This is more exact to show the logical structure. So again, you can get extra credit for doing that. Okay, so keeping the statement numbers here allowed us to more easily do the diagram. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot harder. But what we need to do now is we need to properly label the statements. So statement 6 becomes statement what? Premise 1. Statement 7 becomes premise 2. Statement 8 becomes premise 3. Remember, no conclusions of any kind ever get numbered. Statement 3 becomes premise 4. I deleted that. I don't know what statement number it is, but it's premise 5 now. Okay. Statement 5 becomes premise 6. I've decided that that is in fact the subconclusion, getting rid of the number, getting rid of the question mark. Make sure you get rid of question marks down here. Statement 1 is just the final conclusion. Let's put semicolons. We care about punctuation. We try to do our best. I have typos. You guys have seen them. Minor ones are okay. If you forgot 2 or 3 periods, you'll be okay. If you forgot half of the periods or all of the periods, then you might lose a point. Or 2. Depends on how many statements you have. Okay, so now I've got this. So look, this demonstration and instructional video has been long enough, but what I still need to do is I still need to go through each of these statements, and I need to make sure that I have not distorted anything that is in here. I need to make sure that I have not missed, that everything in here is consistent within here, right? I need to go back in here and make sure I didn't miss anything. And if I did, I need to make sure that it is reflected in the diagram and the pattern, the correction in here. I still need to go through here and see if I can, if I've missed anything in terms of uniform language or whatnot. But I'm going to end the video at this point.